Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the podcast of Talk to Perspective. Today we're going to have a discussion about one of the most burning issues around the world right now, and that's political economy, political culture, and upcoming election. For having a discussion about this very issue, we have our guest with us, Mr. Omar Nasif Abdullah, Senior Lecturer, Department of Marketing and International Business, Northside University. And, politics, economy, culture, and election, these are the terms that do not have connection seriously with each other. But today we are going to make connection, how all these terms are connected with each other, and what's the importance of these terms in the real politics. So, on behalf of Perspective Magazine, now we'd like to invite our guest, Mr. Omar Nasif Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu salam. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining with us today. Today we're going to have a discussion about political economy, political culture, and upcoming election. This is a kind of topic that normally people don't think like this way. So the very first question that I'd like to ask you, what does political economy means in general?
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I think a lot to unpack if we have to talk about the whole concept of political economy. Structurally speaking, probably the term itself suggests that it's an kind of an juxtaposition of two different words, politics and economy.
Right.
So there is kind of a phrase that there is no politics without economics, and there is no economics without politics. So it's an intertwining thought. Classically speaking, I think political economy and the concept of political economy was focused towards understanding the distribution of wealth and equality. That remains the same in modern world as well, but now I think political economy encompasses a lot of other aspects. Mm-hmm. When we talk about politics, we're basically talking about the ruling class, the political parties, in very general term, who determines the policies. And when it comes to policies, we are talking about policies that impact the public.
Right.
And obviously, the public of a republic, their livelihood depends on their earning, their income, and the available resources. And when it comes to available resources, the government has a responsibility to establish a just system, where the distribution of wealth seems to be justifiable. And that's exactly where you see the policy is something that is governed by the politics, but the resource distribution is inherently a topic of economics. And that's exactly where the politics and economics come together. Because there is the question of equality for a state and how the livelihood of the people are affected, starting from the top class to the absolute bottom class. And that's exactly where I think the politicians have to decide that what should be the modus operandi or the framework for wealth distribution to close the inequality gap, and have policies that impact people's lives. And that's exactly where the politics and economics come together, and that becomes political economy.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. Now, we know about culture to some extent, but very few people understand that there is a culture also in politics. Now, the future of the country fully depends on that culture. Now, how would you define political culture in the context of Bangladesh? And why does the fortune of the country depend on political culture?
Well, two very, very heavy definitions, one after another. So very hard to uncap. But it's a very important question, I think. Again, politics and culture coming together. And I think we're having this conversation just a few minutes ago. Well, when we talk about political culture, culture is a very, very big term, an umbrella term that embodies the concept of the livelihood and the shared values of the people of a particular land, in my understanding. Political culture, however, probably focused towards a more focused concept where we're talking about culture within the political sphere of a country. In a country like Bangladesh, you have seen our common interest converges with the idea of politics so much. Therefore, the whole concept of political culture is so very important in Bangladesh. Right. So when you ask me about political culture of Bangladesh, I think what you are asking necessarily is that the ruling class and the political class, and the way we have seen them interacting or behaving with the people.
Right.
That's exactly probably builds the whole understanding of political culture in Bangladesh. And what I think about political culture of Bangladesh is it's quite a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about political culture, there is a lot of, I think, theoretical concepts come together. Mm-hmm. I'm not a political theorist. Mm-hmm. I have my intellectual curiosity mm-hmm. of that topic, but I'm not necessarily a theorist. So what I would like to say you about the political culture in Bangladesh is that it depends on who are the politicians who have ruled us over the decades.
Right.
Because they are the one who is the most important variable in the political culture. And then you have got the general people.
Right.
But you have to understand when we talk about politics mm-hmm. and people's interaction with the politicians and the political parties, you have to understand that general people tends to follow the leader. That's mm-hmm. how the leadership works.
Right.
If you have a leader who has vision and discipline, it hierarchically affects all echelon of the society.
Right.
If the opposite is true, mm-hmm. that the political leader has been historically opportunist,
mm-hmm.
exploiter, who
mm-hmm.
exploited the national wealth for
right.
their own benefit, then we see the same culture as a ripple effect affect every echelon of the society.
Right.
In Bangladesh, the latter happened more.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen politicians over decades after our liberation, whom we have seen exploited national wealth for
right.
their
interests,
narrow gains.
Right, narrow gains.
And that has affected our culture
mm-hmm.
overall. So we have seen a general misunderstanding or a general hatred towards politician.
Right.
The only time we have seen people getting interested about politics of all echelons of society when they see that the repression of politicians is beyond their acceptable limit, which exactly what we have seen in July 24.
Right.
Where the people who were never so conscious about politics all of a sudden become very, very conscious about
right.
their rights, which is, I think, a very pivotal moment for any nation's history. And we were very hopeful that since that happened to us, we are going to open up to a new possibility for decades of Bangladesh.
Right.
That didn't happen. So yeah, in Bangladeshi political culture, I think there is a general lack of respect for the politicians.
Right.
There is a general lack of trust among the people that their politician can bring real changes.
Right.
And that's exactly why we have seen before the last regime,
mm-hmm.
a constant change of political parties. Mm-hmm. Nobody could really continue.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we have seen one party continued for 15 years,
mm-hmm.
they continued that rule by exploiting each and every echelon of the government.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the case of Malaysia,
mm-hmm.
The rule of Mahathir Mohamad probably prolonged for almost 25 years.
25 years.
There have been criticisms for his rule that people said he has some autocratic tendency,
right.
but you will never ever see that Malaysians think that Mahathir Mohamad is an exploiter of the nation. You
right.
will never ever hear that.
And he built the nation.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I have had I've had the fortune of conversation with Malaysian people, and that's exactly what they said. I have seen exactly the same thing in Singapore.
Right.
They have Lee Kuan Yew. There have been criticisms by the West about how Singapore is too disciplinarian.
Right.
And the founder of Spring Singapore, said that Singapore has to do it the way it serves Singapore.
Right.
He never said the way it serves me.
Uh-huh.
Right?
So
we have seen prolonged leadership for multiple years of governance in other Asian countries. But you won't see there are people who are so divided. But look what happened in Bangladesh.
Right.
So in terms of political culture, I think when I say that there's a common lack of respect for the politicians, that's the culture in Bangladesh. And I think July brought us a magnificent chance to change that. We hope that might change, but one can hope. We're seeing this thing probably.
But I think for such a situation, I think political leaders are responsible for it. They basically, because of their responsibility, because the lack of their responsibilities, basically, people don't trust them.
Yeah, that's what
don't believe them at all.
Yeah, that's what I said. That was my entire point.
Right. So
it's the responsibility of the.
I think they have to have. I think some minimal quality for doing politics. Otherwise, they shouldn't come for it.
It's actually, you know what? It's a complex discussion,
right?
Because the people and in Bangladesh political culture, just break it down for a second, if we have time. Is that who are the people who are coming to the politics? Especially, let's talk about the parties who have ruled us after liberation, or at least start if you start from 1990s after we have gained democracy back from the autocracy in Bangladesh. The major political parties and every echelon of the party, we have leaders coming from the very bottom class, economic class, meaning not in all cases, but in many cases. They are being elected by the people, and you can't do anything about it because that's how democracy is.
Right.
And when you send the people who have been elected by popular votes to the parliament, who has absolutely no idea of how policy should be governed, this is the mess that you see in every sector of our life. That's exactly why it happens. How it could be possibly changed, that's a very complex discussion. But I think you have to first fix education. That's what Mahathir have done for Malaysia. You have to have a vision to create generations of people who grow up with critical understanding, who grow up with confidence that they can do something with their life, and they have the minimum freedom of speech from the early stage of their life, and they are not imposed by the government to read or study something that the government decides. So the education system needs fix. If you have that kind of education system, and it can continue for a few years or a few decades, and you'll see that there is a competitive education system that we have built, from which people coming from all walks of life or have the basic understanding of critical thinking. And then again, obviously, if some of them become interested to be a part of the ruling class, people see that there are competent people who are going to the politics and they're doing great. Why shouldn't I do the same? But whenever you see a politicians, it has some kind of a second nature. In psychology, we call it classical conditioning. We, in the back of our mind, you already know that this guy is exploiter. He's going to exploit my resources. Where the respect will come from? So I think this is a complex discussion, but to simplify for the sake of our limited time, is that it requires a leader with conviction, a real vision of change, who exactly understands how to impact every aspect of a state with people who are competent, and he dedicate his life to do exactly that. Then we can see as a change for a few decades. But again, because of our poverty, and when I say poverty, I don't only mean from the financial sense. I think it's a poverty of thoughts. We have been colonized. We shouldn't forget that. For centuries. And centuries of colonization have created generations of people with such colonized mentality. Without a decolonized state, and without a decolonized state of mind, we can't have leadership that can bring change. I don't think that's impossible. I think that's very much possible, and I think slowly that will probably happen for Bangladesh. But unfortunately, that will take multiple July 24 for that to
I think so. Thank you.
No problem.
Though we have gone to a different direction, but yes, the next question that I'd like to ask you is, what's the correlation between political culture and political economy?
Well, as I said before, political economy means that you are basically developing policies for, say, wealth distribution, right? And when we talked about political culture, we have talked about a general distrust on the politicians, right?
Right.
So if you have general distrust of the politicians, if you think your politicians are corrupt, then you know that they will exploit the resources,
Right.
and they will have policies that serves them other than the people.
Right.
I don't need any more evidence than the evidence I have, the mounting evidence of last 15 years.
Right.
I mean, Bangladesh has been turned into people say a corrupted state. It's not corrupted states. Bangladesh was turned into a kleptocracy.
Right.
That's called kleptocracy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the state system, the economic system, the social and political system,
right, everything
becomes so exploitative that people of the last regime have found out ways to exploit resources for their personal gain. The idea was what the last regime wanted to do, in my understanding. Well, I think they have borrowed the idea, whoever their mastermind was, they have borrowed the idea from the Italian mafia culture.
Mm-hmm.
You see the famous dictum from the movie Godfather. It says, keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever could be a threat to the last regime, the first thing they have done, they tried to win him over with money and resources. And if you can do that, you can do that to most of the people in a country like Bangladesh.
It's quite easy.
Yeah, it's a poverty of thought, remember?
Right.
The few people who he couldn't control,
mm-hmm.
they were abducted.
Mm-hmm.
They went to Anakor.
Right.
Right. So I don't need any more example to show you that how political culture
and economy
interact together and exploits everything.
Right. Thank you. We know that Bangladesh is a democratic country where people's will is a determinative factor, at least theoretically. And we have witnessed that in every democratic country all over the world. Now, mafia businessmen keep a big factor to manipulate the result of the election. How does it work in the well-practiced democratic countries, and how the same thing work in Bangladesh? How would you differentiate between Bangladesh and all the developed countries?
Yeah. So what was the first part of the question?
The mafia businessmen keep a big factor to manipulate the result of elections. So how does it work in the well-practiced democratic countries, and how does it work in Bangladesh?
That's a good question. Let me mention the key differentiating factor here. I think many of us have this understanding that the Western governments, the idea of corruption doesn't happen in the Western hemisphere or Western government system.
Right.
Nothing could be more wrong. Huge corruption happens there as well. Exploitation happens there as well.
Right.
But I think this is my generalized understanding for the general understanding of the people.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Western states, if you look at some of the very functional Asian states,
mm-hmm.
Scandinavian states and European states, all of these states, in my opinion, I call it functional states.
Right.
And the nature of functional state is that they have a tacit understanding between the politicians and the other institutions that they will not intervene in state institutions. They will make state institutions functional.
Right.
It is possible in functional states,
right.
be it in Asian state or American or any other part of the world,
right.
even in Asia, South Asia. The functional state means that even if you are people of power,
mm-hmm.
even if you belong to the ruling class,
mm-hmm.
and if you have done something and a normal people, general public filed a lawsuit against you, the justice system will listen to the person.
Right.
Right. They have an access to the justice system.
Right.
But in Bangladesh,
mm-hmm.
if you want to file a lawsuit against an MP, every aspect of the justice system will bar you from doing that and make your life an absolute nightmare.
Right.
So state institutions over there, I would like to say, are functional.
Right.
They have made that understanding that the state institutions will be free of government intervention.
Right.
That doesn't happen here.
Mhm.
So that's a very, very key difference. But I don't want to paint a rosy picture of the Western world, because when it comes to their Western supremacy,
Mhm.
that's exactly where everything else falls off. They will
Right.
teach you humanity, law, and everything, governance. But if there is any other power who is challenging them, then they will crush the opponent. And that's exactly where no rules of law, no regulation, no freedom of speech works.
Mhm.
You have seen what's happening in the Middle East and Palestine, and how the ruling class and the Western ruling class have completely disregarded every aspect of international law.
Right.
So they're not perfect. And I don't want to be that person who is so colonized to say that Westerns are perfect. Yeah, they're not.
They're not.
But the difference is their state institutions are functional.
Mhm.
In our case, by the change of the government, you will see every state functions goes through an inertia.
Mhm.
Haven't you seen right after the last regime has gone? What was the major complaint of current interim government? They said police aren't working.
Right.
Can you even imagine that happening to any other country in the world? No. Police is there to, as a state force, and their key responsibility is to serve the people.
Mhm.
Right? No matter who is the government, they should be able to do that. But in Bangladesh, that doesn't happen. Government changes, police becomes non-functional. Government changes, a lot of bureaucrats, they lose their jobs.
Right.
So that is the, I think, key difference between how it works in Bangladesh and how it works in the world.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. Now, I'd like to know, we know about the theory of manufacturing consent, and this is outlined by Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman. How does it work in a democratic country like Bangladesh?
Right. I would like to ask you the same question.
Right.
Not like this, but if I ask you the question, that imagine the role of media in last 15 years.
Wow.
Probably will get my answer.
Right.
That's called manufacturing consent.
Mm-hmm.
Again, structurally speaking, I mean, linguistically speaking, manufacturing consent means you are manufacturing a narrative to serve the purpose of a special interest group.
Right.
In most of the cases, the interest group are the elite class, the ruling class, or the ruling economic class.
Maybe they're in the power, something like that.
Who has wealth and who wants to build a narrative that serves their interest.
Right.
And they do it with the major media. Mm-hmm. That's called manufacturing consent. Look at Bangladesh and look how manufacturing consent have become a serious issue in Bangladesh. I must tell you this, that see, there is a large part of the people, large section of Bangladeshi people, whenever he listens to the word Mukti Juddha in Bangladesh,
right,
Liberation War in 1971 in Bangladesh, the first thing they feel is not pride or empathy, mm-hmm, because it was a bloody war.
Right.
The first thing they feel is that, okay, this is a way to exploit me and torture me, mm-hmm, because that's what the last government has done.
Right.
They have used the narrative of 1971 to dehumanize every person, every social and political group that opposed the idea of the last regime. Mm-hmm. And that is a serious, serious problem.
Even in their party also.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely. And manufacturing consent comes in so many different forms that if I try to unpack them, the discussions will prolong. But what your major media highlights, what perspective they take, what narrative they build when it comes to specific social, political, and economic issues.
Right.
That's important. Right. Do you have critical discussions on media? Noam Chomsky, I can't exactly remember the specific quote, but Noam Chomsky has said that we talk about freedom of speech, but in an authoritarian state where the government is trying to build a narrative for them,
right,
sometimes they create a a passage for discussions, which gives people illusion that free discussions are happening.
Right.
But in fact, the boundary of that free discussion is set by the government.
Right.
And that's exactly what we have seen in the last regime.
Right.
You see, the last prime minister have said, why? Talk show is happening.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are talking against the government, and you say there is no freedom of
I think
freedom of
they
speech.
set the boundary to talk
Yes.
about that. Mm-hmm.
And that's what now Noam Chomsky has said. So the idea of freedom of speech and idea that the journalists who ask, when they ask questions, they will ask probing question, not leading question. I don't think that exists in Bangladesh.
Right.
So that's manufacturing consent. When we say that the ruling economic and political class are trying to build narrative that serves their interests. And that's so problematic.
Thank you. Well, the press and media were under huge pressure during the Hossain regime, but at the same time, many journalists worked for Hossain regime willingly, that we have seen. Now, the famous philosopher Edward Said discussed in details how media and experts determine as to how we see the rest of the world. Now, many experts in Bangladesh see Muslims and its identity in the eye of West. How would you interpret their wrong understanding about Islam and its symbols? How economic interest works behind such political activism?
Again, your questions are loaded with so many different and important elements that it's very difficult to unpack it just in one conversations. But I'll try to answer as much as I can do with my limited understanding. The whole concept of Islam and the Islamic scholarship and Islamic lifestyle and Islam in our social and political life in Bangladesh, it has been such a mixed bag of different thoughts. You see, being a Muslim majority country, people have a general tendency. We were talking about culture at the very beginning. So culture is shared values. So for generations, we have seen Islam in our livelihood. So Islam has been a dominant force in our life, in our livelihood. But then again, how Islam will be present in the public sphere was determined by the government and the power. Right? That's where the culture and power interact with each other. In case of Bangladesh, endless exploitations have been happening, right? Because when you talk about Islam and its presence in the larger spheres in the politics, we have seen parties who have an Islamic agenda in the politics, right? They're Islamic parties, political parties. And then if you just look at the Islamic political parties in Bangladesh, you will see the prevalence of different thoughts within the paradigm of Islamic politics. Right. There is Jamaat Islami following one perspective, or should I say multiple perspective, governed by one of the leading scholar of Pakistan and South Asia, Maulana Maududi. And then there are other parties, Deobandi, Salafi, and so on and so forth. And the most interesting thing is, you see, you could, if we had a culture of scholarship in Bangladesh, then you could say, okay, Maududi is a school of thought, Deobandi is a school of thought, Salafi is a school of thought. We can have our differences, right? We can have our differences.
Must be.
We can have our debates.
Right.
But the problem is in Bangladesh, it often erupts into collision among these parties, and one cancelling each other. So there is a growing tension between the Islamic political parties and how they differ with each other. Now there's another dimension to it. These political parties are interacting with the power, and when it comes to power, the powerful parties that we have seen governed us, the two parties that have governed us since 1990, to be very specific, and before that, during the regime of Ershad and his autocracy, we have seen that all of the parties have tried to use Islam in the public sphere to attract people to vote for them because they know that there is a huge force who are motivated by the Islamic leaders of different thoughts. And this is where the complexity is multifaceted. Right. So you see one party is violently opposing each other because they are siding with the government. That is what we have seen in the last regime as well.
Right.
So it's very interesting. I'm a very big admirer of classical Islamic scholarship. Whenever I try to listen to Islamic thoughts, I have to unfortunately pivot to listen to the international scholars. Whenever I come and try to see Islamic scholars that has been coming from Bangladesh, I don't really see classic understanding of Islam, nuanced understanding. I see they're aggressively pushing their ideas and their critical thoughts on their own lens, rather than placing it as a classical understanding of one school of thought. And that has been a constant painful journey for me and for many others. So that's a complexity with the Islamic groups and the Islamic parties in Bangladesh. And I think having, and I must be clear on that issue, that having different school of thought is very ideal, but having clashes of different thoughts all the time, and the people who are not necessarily a part of the religious group, but they want Islam as a part of their identity, they are the people who suffered the most, because they always ask you the question that, whom should I follow? Everyone is canceling everyone else.
Each other,
So that's a problem, isn't it?
Thank you. So, now the way people consider politics as nasty, the way many ulama communities define democracy as haram or unfit for Muslim countries. Most importantly, the way politicians consider politics as the tools of their personal benefits. Do you think such mentality is mainly responsible for such unacceptable political culture?
Yeah, I think
Bangladesh?
The basic problem is, Nayeem, the basic problem is, I think, we need to revive the classical Islamic scholarship in Bangladesh. That's it. I don't know how we will revive that. I know the journey will be excruciatingly painful, but we need to do that. Otherwise, your question is a damning indictment of the differences we have. What we need is the revival of true Islamic scholarship, and for that to happen, if the Islamic parties, the parties who have great banners, who can have a huge public gathering, if they have to focus only on Islamic scholarship and Islamic studies and devoid of politics, I think that is even better for us. We need a generation of uncluttering our thoughts. Because your question has that point, that this difference of thought and everything that we were talking about. Basically, what we really need to do, again, politics, Islam, democracy is haram. You can't possibly be a better scholar than Allama Iqbal, who envisioned the idea of a Muslim land. He understood this, and I think I'm not a student of Islam. I read it as much as I can. I can listen to the scholars, and as much as I understand, is that the idea that we see in the public sphere in Bangladesh about Islam, and the clerics, the wads, the culture of wads you can see in Bangladesh, and different political parties, except one or two major political parties, they have a version of Islam that they present to the people, which I think lacks the nuanced understanding of how Islam should be understood. There is a reason the whole concept of fiqh and usulul fiqh stays within the paradigm of Islamic school of thought. Because if you think Islam is a stiff ideology which doesn't evolve, you couldn't be more wrong.
Mhm.
One of the most beautiful thing about Islam, which I learned from some of the classical Islamic scholars, is that Islam retained the very basics of its beauty of Tawheed,
Mhm.
but whatever the land Islam has gone to,
Mhm.
it has become, the religion become theirs.
Right.
So they adopted the culture
religion.
of the land
Right.
without losing the moral of it.
Right.
But the divisiveness we see now
Mhm.
happens, in my understanding, because we have become a clans of fighting manhaj,
Mhm.
which is never ideal. So one would say that this is okay for us to be a part of the government because democracy is something we have to adopt because of the need of time. And some others say that no, democracy is haram. Allama Iqbal in Allahabad in 1913, Allahabad speech has said that we would like to see Muslims who would not be cornered
Right.
with their own identity only. You need to have your politics intact as well, but you also have to have the understanding, the khudi that he always talked about, the self-consciousness. We need to have the right to political determination.
Mhm.
So he has seen Islam not just as an ideology to preach,
Mhm.
but an ideology that can basically change the order of the day.
Right.
And for that to happen, we need classical Islamic scholarship reemerge in Bangladesh. And that's exactly when you won't see that kind of toxic debate happening. One is saying democracy is haram, the other that they are adopting democracy for their own rights. It's less Islam,
Mhm.
more them. And I'm tired of this. We are tired of this. We have to have a clear understanding. Again, I said the conflict of ideas will always be there.
Right.
What we see here is not necessarily conflict of ideas.
Mhm.
It's not constructive conflict. It's destructive conflict.
Right.
And there are
They
differences.
are based on their own interest in some cases.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have heard about economy of Moulabadi during Hasina's fascist regime. Definitely, the whole project was a native version of war on terror project.
Mm.
Now, America has come out of such project, but we have seen that our neighbor country and Fred Awami League leaders are still trying to establish the same. Now, the question is, what kind of deep impact has fallen on the country? How such narrative facilitated the torture against the opposition leader, activists, and citizens of the country?
Yeah. Remember, it's good. The question is connecting to your initial questions.
Right.
You have talked about politics, you talked about economy and culture. Everything is coming to, and manufacturing consent.
Right.
It's a tactic I have seen used by the major imperialist power.
Right.
It's a part of manufacturing consent.
Mhm.
If you need to dehumanize your opponent, you need to use powerful rhetoric, and you need to implant that rhetoric in the mind of people.
Right.
So if I want to dehumanize you
Mhm.
because you're making some point against me which are right,
Right.
and people understand your point,
Right.
but I don't want that to happen, then
Right.
the thing I would do is I will try to give you a brand name and implant that in people's mind.
Right.
So I start calling you an extremist.
Right.
And
And Jongi and some other terms.
and I create a culture and a narrative style which tries to paint you as an extremist, and people will always reject your ideas, not because who you are, because they have been constantly fed the word
Right.
extremist. That's exactly what happened for the term that we have seen, fundamentalist, which is Moulabadi. There have been scholars, Western scholars,
Right.
who have been fighting against it for last 3 decades, 2 decades. After 9/11 happened, in USA. And I think it came with a lot of sacrifices, but globally there has been an understanding that how US have used us versus them a narrative.
Right.
That's what Bush said, that either you were with us or against us. There is nothing in between.
Right.
That was the birthplace of the whole concept of fundamentalism.
Right.
There have been scholars who have said that without having the fundamental understanding of anything, you can be a good professor, you can be a good businessman.
Right.
So every one of us is a fundamentalist. But that's the power of manufacturing concept.
Right.
You have painted the word fundamentalist in such a manner so that whenever I think of fundamentalist, I see a person with a large beard is trying to blow me up with a suicide bomb.
Right.
So that's exactly what happened. Our last regime has done exactly the same thing to dehumanize, especially the Islamic group of political people who tried to oppose them, because some of them had some real power and a dedicated and disciplined manpower to fight against last regime.
Right.
And that's exactly where they have used this term on them over and over again to dehumanize them.
Right.
And that's exactly when we have seen that if you are Shibir, it is right to kill you.
Right.
And it has set on the mindset of many urban people in Bangladesh so much that if there is a guy who is being beaten to death because he's a Shibir, they don't bat an eye because they understand, okay, that should be fine.
All right.
The same thing has happened in West, right? Again, you talk about manufacturing consent. That's exactly what the narrative, that's how the narrative of liberation war is also constructed in Bangladesh as well.
Right.
Whenever you think about a perpetrator or a Razakar, you always think about a person with beard and a tupi.
Right.
That is something doesn't reflect the reality, the historical reality. That is something what the media has implanted in our brain.
Right.
That's exactly what the last regime has also done.
Right.
I think hopefully after July 24, and the only hope, despite all of these negative things that we have discussed, the hope I have here is this: Bangladesh has an overwhelmingly young population, who are very, very connected to the world. They desperately need a change, and it's not very easy to tell them something and
manipulate
them right away.
Right.
They have shown us some kind of resilience.
Right.
I'm a faculty at a private university, and there is a common understanding among people that private university people are less bothered about the politics.
Right.
But in 2018, during the
Quota movement.
Sorok Poribohon Andolon.
Oh, yeah.
And then in 2024, July movement, I have seen them accepting bullet on their chest and standing tall. So I think the same old rhetoric is not going to work as much as it has done before. But then again, we also have to understand as a faculty of marketing and communications, I also have to tell you, it also depends on how you manufacture the content, how powerful control you have over the media, and how good is your resources. Because if you have great resources, you can always manipulate people.
Right.
So in that case, I think Bangladesh will need, going forward from now, Bangladesh will need a very active civil society. Obviously, we will be needing a government who will be more responsible towards the people. The hope of that will be there if some of the reforms that we're talking about now take place, because that creates a balance between the power and the responsibility and the accountability. If that doesn't happen, the future is dark. So our focus at the moment should be to make that balance. And that's exactly where what July 24 has brought us, the massive chance of change that can happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, what's the correlation between framing Islamic symbols as a symbol of terror and Shahbag Ganojagaran Moncho? So what kind of political economy worked behind it? And do you think that such narrative was mainly responsible for looting the bank by some companies having relation with Awami League regime?
Yeah, I actually have somewhat attended the question in my last answer.
Right.
Because I was talking about how manufacturing consent works and how 1971 narrative has been used for the benefit of the power.
We try to focus on the looting.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
So Shahbag basically was a cover-up for all of that.
Right.
Because this is where I think I would like to remember one of my famous decolonizing scholars, scholar on decolonizing thoughts, Mr. Franz Fanon. He has a book called Wretched of the Earth. That's where he has differentiated between two ideas. One is nationalism, the other is national consciousness.
Okay.
What we have here in Bangladesh and in most of the countries in the world is nationalism.
Right.
But in a country like Bangladesh, where corruption and a twisted level of education is rampant, this is where nationalism becomes not only nationalism, it's toxic and it often succumbs into jingoism.
Right.
So what happens in nationalist politics is that they try to find out narratives from the national history,
right,
and try to build an industry around it. Right? So Bangladesh has a Mukti Juddha industry.
Right.
I call it a Mukti Juddha industry.
Kind of Chetona industry or something.
Yeah, exactly. The term is borrowed from Norman Finkelstein, who talks about the idea of Zionism and how they have used Holocaust,
right,
to exploit their personal agenda against the people of Palestine and create a overlasting impact on US politics.
Right.
We call it Holocaust industry. So Bangladesh has a Mukti Juddha industry. Shahbag was the ultimate championship of this Mukti Juddha industry in Bangladesh.
Right.
So when it since it talks about a national pride of Bangladesh, pride, quote unquote pride, or national struggle of Bangladesh, which is true, of 1971, you will see that there is a large number of people who will be sympathetic to that. And whenever a large number of people have been sympathetic to the cause, it gives you a shield against your political opponents.
Right.
That's how Shahbag was created. And always remember that when you have a shield like Shahbag against your political opponents, it's not only a political tool, it's also an economic tool.
Right.
Because that gives you the legitimacy over your opponents. And using the legitimacy, you don't only oppress them, you also loot people's wealth for their personal gain. That's exactly where Shahbag becomes equally responsible for all of the economic mismanagement Bangladesh had gone through. Because what Shahbag has given the last regime, the Sheikh Hasina, is the tool that she wanted, is to govern a country that was divided.
No, she said once that she needed absolute power.
Yeah,
absolute power means that she needed to loot everything.
Absolutely.
To get
and that's
everything.
That's exactly what Shahbag has given her.
Right.
Because Shahbag was a popular movement where the uncritical middle class, a large section of them actually went there.
Right.
Shahbag divided us. It eroded the social understanding and unity we have had. You have studied in a public university in Bangladesh.
Right.
Probably you have had a political identity. I had my own political identity probably. But whatever the identity was, whoever my friend was and whatever his political identity was, the culture existed that we could sit together and have teas and have conversations. After Shahbag, this kind of social understanding
and relationship
has completely been thrown into the garbage. Bangladesh has been thrown into a pulpit of division. And whenever it happens, it's a great tool for the authority, an authoritarian regime, to implant their control over every echelon of the society. That's exactly where they have started exploiting.
I think Shahbag was a tool to divide us and them.
Absolutely.
Right.
That was the major tool, right?
Right.
It gave them the legitimacy that they wanted to have. And then, of course, whenever they consolidated the power, you will see that the looting of the last regime it didn't happen as much as it happened during the last few years
Right.
than the previous years.
Right.
So first they have set the ground for a deep-rooted political divisions among the
People.
parties that could challenge
Right.
the power. And whenever that happened, they did not only confiscate their rights to speak, they also have confiscated their economic rights.
Right.
And that's exactly where it has come together.
Right. Thank you. We have experienced enforced disappearance, torture, killing, and law enforcing agencies were involved with such heinous crime. Why they became the part of it? What kind of interest was behind such time of crime?
Complex discussions, but the way the last regime has done it is that
It was like quite impossible for any sector to challenge them.
Even if you call it Aum League 2,
Right.
2019 to 2024, if you call it Aum League 2, Aum League 1, from 1996 to 2001,
Right.
looks almost like a saint.
Right.
They didn't even do that in their first regime. But when they came for the second term in 2009, it kept going worse, and worse. It's unthinkable repression we have seen.
Right.
So I think the reason people have become a part of that is what I have answered when I was talking about the whole concept of kleptocracy.
Mm-hmm.
What kleptocracy does, it shows you enormous wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example, and I will break it down for you and the audience probably if they listen to me. Is that, for example, when you do election, and if you want to motivate the election in your favor,
Right.
you need to bag a lot of government agencies in your pocket.
Right.
Police, bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
and all other government departments. Now, there could be bureaucrats, there could be government officers
Mm-hmm.
whom you can't easily buy with corruption money, but give them a comfortable life.
Right.
So comfortable that they will think that you are the one who gave me comfortable life. I will do everything for you.
Right.
So kleptocracy is much deep-rooted than what you think normal corruption could possibly
You
do.
do the corruption. Maybe you are the part of corruption, but you don't realize.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's for the people who are not easily corruptible. You show them a life
Right.
that is so lavish, that is so good. For example,
Easy to live.
easy to live. For example, when we were growing up, we always heard that, you probably heard that the same, that government job is not well paid.
Right.
People were not really happy because government officers have a tough life. But during last regimes, the kind of apartments, the kind of resources that you have spent for the public sector people, it's completely unbelievable. People have thought,
Government job became like
you wouldn't see many countries where a large part of your national budget goes for the government salary. That happened for Aum League's regime. I don't exactly remember the stat now, but I ask people to go and check. It was unbelievable. So I say that happens to the people who are not corruptible. What about the people who are easily corruptible? Think about the former IGP of police. There was this media outlet, Netro News, who have done a reporting on the wristwatch of the former IGP. He had wristwatches which is valued at more than $100,000.
unbelievable.
$100,000 wristwatch. If you give the IGP of police that kind of access to wealth, and then now you know that he had resorts after resorts, lands after lands in his name. So that's what we call kleptocracy. So you said, why did they join? This is exactly why they joined. You have shown them enormous wealth. And you also understand the whole concept of abduction.
Right.
You have seen the reports of Gum Commission.
Right.
Well, I think abduction, or in our popular rhetoric, or in Bangladeshi, in our Bangla, we call it Gum. I think abduction or Gum is much more dehumanizing, is much more difficult than killing a person.
Right.
It robs you of your courage, totally.
Totally.
Because when you know that your loved one is dead, you have a closure.
Right.
But you have to wait years after years, not knowing what exactly happened to them.
There are many families here.
Yeah, that's a torture that you can't bear.
Right.
That's exactly why I think abduction is one of the worst crime against humanity.
Right.
And the people who have been part of that, majority of them have been part of that because of the resources that were offered to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who are not at all corruptible, they had abduction and the fear of doom.
They denied, basically.
So they had to do it.
Right.
Right. So this is exactly what happened.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now let's talk about the student politics. How would you analyze or criticize the student politics, extortion, and committing crimes as part of exercising power politics?
Our student politics is not necessarily free of the political culture that we have talked about.
Right. They are basically motivated by the political,
yes,
traditional political parties.
Of course. And our student politics also is not free of the problematic education, divisive education system we have. Right. So you cannot possibly expect a different outcome from our students. However, I think I need to make a little bit of a distinction here between the politics I have seen in public universities and private universities.
Right.
I have been a student of a public university. I'm teaching now at a private university, so I can give you both perspective.
Right.
Public university, because of its nature and because of its functionality and its relationship with the government, are pretty close to the state, because all of the financial resources are coming from the public sector or the public universities. So they necessarily have to negotiate with the government. And that's exactly where you see that more and more government influence injected into the idea of student politics in public universities.
Right.
And whenever there is government influences, there will be other forces who will be interested about that. And that necessarily ends up in bloody confrontations and deaths and closure, which has been a reality for Bangladeshi student politics in public universities for decades.
Right.
Despite the fact, we often hear people taking great pride because Mukti Juddha 1971, the movement against the dictator in 1990s and 2024, public university students have played a significant role, and it is not to be forgotten. But first, let's ask ourselves the question, what do you think a university should do?
Right.
What is the responsibility of a university? Let's first define what a university is and its functionality is. So from that perspective, and hopefully the universal perspective of a university, it has to nurture scholars. It has to be a place of critical arguments.
Right.
If people have political aspirations, they can go for political aspirations.
Sure.
But university campus cannot be a breeding space for future confrontational politicians. Right. That's the problem with politics in Bangladesh. Therefore, as we have discussed so far, that Bangladesh political culture and political economy, there is a major distrust because the politicians exploit. If there is a senior politician who use public wealth for self-exploitation or parties' exploitations, why don't you think a part of that will not go to the student politics? Because students are the ones who is the most driving force on the field, isn't it?
Right.
So you have to give them the money. And that's exactly what has been happening.
Right.
Now, largely private universities have been out of it because by the, I think the proclamation of UGC, student politics can happen on campus. So this kind of toxic political culture is absent, but I'm not against politics. Students must be politically extremely aware because your existence.
They are the people, right?
Because your existence depends on politics.
So you can't deny.
Bangladesh, as we have discussed before, that we have a general distrust on politicians because of the political culture in Bangladesh, but that doesn't mean that you need not to be politically conscious.
Right.
So therefore, I think we need a massive change in the political culture in Bangladesh, especially student politics and public universities, to be very specific. I have had my own reservations about lack of consciousness among the private university students about politics. But in 2018, 2024, we have seen that they have broken many of my ideas. But I think a private university will need more critical discussions on campus, which I think is now limited. It needs to be more critical. Public university has more open dialogues. It can happen. More open dialogues can happen on public university grounds, but it depends on who is in the power.
Right.
So I hope we need a change in our conception of how university should function.
Right.
And if we change that, our focus should be to create a space for cutting-edge, innovative research and development activities on campus.
Right.
Student politics within the campus should be based on the students' rights. They can discuss about national politics. It's well within their rights.
Right.
But when they do that, it is important for you to distinguish between you being a party spokesman versus you being a politically conscious student leader.
Right.
There are differences.
Right.
I hope that happens.
Thank you. We have come to almost an end of the podcast today. Now, the very last question that I'd like to ask you is, do you think there is a correlation between economic interest of many ulama communities in politics? If yes, then does it work? And if not, how would you define their political position? And especially Salafi or that kind of community. You may talk about the far-right movement like IS or any other organization.
I think I will make my answer brief here, because it's such an issue which I think should be spoken by the people who are within the ulama community and the political community, because it's a very, very contentious issue, and I don't want to bring more contentions here. But all I would like to say that, yes, I think there are economic interests here. We have seen a major political force, Hifazat Islam, during the last regime. During Shapla incident, they have been a major force against the ruling class. Then they become a major force who are behind the ruling class, shamelessly siding with them. So if there is no economic or other interest, it would never happen. So I think there are interests which I think juxtaposes with each other. But yeah, I think if I understood your question correctly, at the moment, I think there are elements which we see within the Islamic community in Bangladesh who could possibly be a part of the global phenomena of extremism, we think. There is no doubt that a large part of the whole concept of extremism has been manufactured by the West for their own interests. But then again, you have to understand society and politics so very complex. We have seen a lot of youths from the West have been misguided by that rhetoric and have joined the force of extremists, which further proved the point the West wanted to make, that, see, we have talked about extremist ideas. Bangladesh might fall into that danger zone. The only way we can prevent that is by the major Islamic parties who have political influence, have an absolute clear understanding that extremism is not the way to go, in whatever form. If that element exists, they have a responsibility to have a unity among them to prevent that kind of groups being more powerful than they should be, because that can endanger not only Bangladesh's internal stability, it invites international attention, which we don't want on our land. And if that happens, that not only endangers our state of affair, it endangers our sovereignty, and that can't happen.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining with us and share lots of idea about political culture, economy, and upcoming election. On behalf of Perspective Magazine, we're really, really grateful to you to give us time, and we hope that we'll see you in another podcast in the future if you have time. Thank you.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you so much for inviting me here, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you. All right. Dear audience, we have talked about political culture, economy, and future election. I believe, and I strongly believe, if you go through the podcast, you will get a clear view about politics and what happens in the country right now. Your eye will open and see a different picture about the politics. Maybe we don't have the idea about politics, but yes, politics is important. Politics is the part of our life. We can't deny it. I hope this episode will give you a clear idea about the importance of politics. That's all for today. See you soon on some other podcast. Allah Hafiz.